I work out headquarters. For those of you that are members of PSEA, your membership dues goes to pay my salary. And because all of you are working in the classrooms or working in the field of education on a daily basis, I tend to be one of your representatives that shows up at all those really exciting meetings of like the State Board of Education, where there are only 2 people on the state board that have any education background. You know, and then there are other places where I am a member or attend that are, from my perspective, more exciting, more involved in special education, and that would be things like school-wide positive behavior supports, the leadership team. I just recently finished my term on the special advisory panel for the state, which gives advice to the Bureau of Special Education, and the list goes on. You know, buy me a drink and I can tell you the rest of my life's history. Okay, but I'm excited to be here because I thought I'd do something a little different. You notice the PowerPoint's not up. I'm doing it old school, but I gave you a handout. Now, we have extra copies, so if you want to write on your copy when I'm going through some of it, you can, but you can also get an additional one to make additional copies later. One of the resources I'm supplying is the 3 infographics. I thought this is a perfect group to bring it to. My push is for the parent engagement piece when it comes to transition. So I convinced our communications division to help me with the graphics and do infographics. And for those of you that don't know that term, that typically is what banks do to say, here's your path to retirement if you give us all your money. Okay, well, it's a one-pager. It's to grab attention with the graphics and give short snippets of information to get the message out there. So we have 3 infographics there related to transition. I also brought an accommodations piece that I tweaked from someplace in Kansas. I liked what they had done, so I tweaked it a bit and produced that. I'm not going to read those. They're there for you. The other handout, though, that you see, that's a lot of words, we're going to be going over that, but things constantly evolve, so I'm going to go over a couple things that aren't on the list first, and then I'll get into the list, okay? So the first thing is that ESSA has come into being. We used to have No Child Left Behind. We now have new federal laws. And they go into implementation almost immediately. So that's going to impact all of us in a lot of different ways. We just don't know how much or in what ways yet. Okay, so the first thing is highly qualified is gone. Federal government just eliminated it. So what does that mean for us in the state? Well, we don't know yet because we have Chapter 4, and in Chapter 4 for special education it says now, if you graduate after 2014, you have to have a special ed degree and a certificate in an academic area. You can't come out like at the high school level, you can't come out just with a special ed degree. Elementary is the same. You have to come out as dual elementary and special ed. So it's all specialized. And then if you look at what we call the CSPGs, that's, if you will, your job descriptor from the state. A lot of them have been slightly tweaked over time since highly qualified came to be. And so we, if you will, we have highly qualified in our state. But that may go away, and we may see the state go in there and change things down the road. We're not sure. The last time it was a bloodbath when Chapter 4 was addressed, when they made higher ed change the way they did business and how they gave degrees. So we think that the state board's a little bit gun-shy to deal with that again so soon, but you never know what's going to happen. Your school profiles, you know, each of you have a building profile. That's going to change. Now remember, your school profiles impact your evaluation. Okay? Well, now there's talk of having an evaluation series of data, a school profile, which will be separate, different, and maybe some the same data, and then there's a third category that gets reported to the federal government. So that may mean that your evaluations will be impacted because of the way the federal law changed and the way the state's going to relook at that. Okay, so I'm sort of putting it on your radar screen that that may happen. And then I'll get into some other things. Okay, for the state, I'll get into a lot more special ed stuff, but remember, we still don't have a budget. It's craziness. In fact, a lot of people that are involved in the state that are supposed to go to things like this aren't able to get out of their buildings, or not allowed to leave and travel. Okay, so that's one thing that we're still worried about. The other thing is, and let's face it, we always mention it, pensions. It's still an issue. And so I want to thank all of you that voted in the last election, because we elected Supreme Court judges for Pennsylvania that will have a huge impact on the pension decision making. Hint, hint, if you hadn't elected them, there's a good chance that your pension that you love and know wouldn't exist down the road, because we think that there's going to be changes to the pension, and our organization will be fighting that. So it means they'll probably go to the Supreme Court. So if you didn't vote, you could have possibly eliminated your own pension. Shot yourself in the foot. Okay. Now, on the state level, there's the other thing, and I did my happy dance. I do that once in a while, but I'm not going to do it on camera here. And that is that we had new legislation that delays the Keystone exams, what that means for our students in the way of impacting graduation. Okay? So everyone got that message that it's delayed again. But what people don't understand is that there's another part in the legislation, and this is where you can play an active role. And that is that the legislators said to the state, you need to look and see, are there any other options that could be used instead of the high-stakes test to say that kids are college or career ready, that we will be able to graduate them by using something else. And so they're going to form a committee, they're going to look at the options. So now through your various organizations that you belong to, and most of us belong to more than one organization, okay, you need to beat the drums and say what you think would be valid measures. That's the key. They're going to be looking for valid measures. So we just had a small meeting of our department, and we started to generate some names of different things that would be considered valid measures. And we thought, it's not just about college. It says college and career ready. So how about the NOCTI? Why couldn't that be used as a possibility? How about the ASVAB? Because if you get a score of roughly around 28 on the ASVAB, the military will accept you, and you can have a career in the military. How about employment? If you're in co-op, what about if you're employed before you get out of high school? Duh! You're career ready if you're working and you're getting paid above, minimum wage or better, right? How about those individuals that are employed with job coaching support? And the job coaching support is fading over time. Duh, they're career ready. So there are options that I'm hinting to you right now, and you may have some other ideas, is you need to convey it to those people that you know that are movers or shakers in your organizations to say, we want to plug, we want to lobby that those things be considered as part of the mix. Because that means we won't have our special ed students in remediation hell, and I mean hell, for how many semesters, losing out on all their electives, okay? And, we do have some people, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but we have some administrators that don't fully understand the law. They get told by somebody else who interpreted it and didn't really read the law. And so they misunderstand what you can and can't do when it comes to the Keystone exams and the project-based assessment and all that. So I just want to throw that in the mix. That is something that they have to do within the next year, since this legislation was passed. Okay? So those are the things that aren't on your sheet, but they're like, if you will, it's like cream rising to the top. So all of a sudden it just sort of happened, and now they're rising as people are starting to think about them, and there'll be committees or meetings held related to that. So I want to cover some other areas, and please, I love questions, so if there's something related or closely related to it, throw your hand up or holler to me. Okay, so the patent system is going to be they're looking at resource officers, okay, your security in some of your schools, and there are certain requirements for their job. A lot of them are retired police officers because you have to have certain skill sets, etc. They still sometimes implement things the way they did when they were a police officer. And some of those things are illegal in schools. It sounds crazy, but here you are, police officers who are working as your security force are doing things illegal in schools. They are not allowed to use prone restraints in your schools. Okay? Prone restraints are illegal by way of Chapter 14. It is a restraint that, since 2008, you're not allowed to use. So if they're using it, they can use that on the street, and they can kill people on the street if they want, but they can't do it in our schools. We had one kid in Children's Peace, which is not a public school, that the child died because of a prone restraint. Because it was done too long, the kid was overweight, the kid was on medicine, and it decreased the kid's breathing, and the kid suffocated. Okay? So what happens is that the state realizes they can't just say, don't do it, that sort of thing. So now they're putting together a video training that will be available online for the security forces in your schools. Because how many of your schools offer in-service day just for security? You typically only have 1 to 3 or 4 people working in that field. So what happens is they don't get the training. So now they'll be able to get it online. So that's the Bureau of Special Ed working with safe schools to sort of coordinate that. Okay. I'm giving you the latest information. So some of this stuff's going to stick with you because it may impact you, and other stuff you'll say, oh, okay, interesting. It'll be good for a Friday night cocktail party, right? Okay. So the Bureau of Special Ed is being pressured by the Special Advisory Panel to look at residential treatment facilities, because what's happening is kids are just coming back because either their insurance is cut off, they've reached their max, or they've finished, they've completed the therapy, they're not in intensive therapy anymore, and so they can come back to schools. And all of a sudden they arrive to your school buildings and you're like, whoa, I didn't know they were coming. You know, surprise, I'm here, no transition plan. I mean transition like, you know, smooth transition like what services does the child need when they come back? Or can they just come back and just make it on their own? So those sort of things are starting to be addressed. The problem is that the Bureau of Special Ed doesn't handle all the regulations for their RTFs. So that becomes problematic because they have their own silos, and they haven't changed their regulations in the other systems in centuries. I'm exaggerating, but in a very, very long time. So what happens is that now the Bureau of Special Ed said, well, how can we sort of get in there to do a little bit of work? So what they're doing is they're now going to be surveying parents whose kids were placed there by the public schools, okay? Or they are being educated by public schools. So an example is, if this gentleman here comes here to this residential treatment facility, the public school that covers these 3 tables is responsible for his education. Now, some RTFs then try to convince the parents that, you know what, the best thing for your child is for us to educate, not the school district. So sometimes they get parents to sign off on that. But otherwise, this district is responsible for his education. And then they bill this district over here. They send the bill to the superintendent because that's where he resides. Okay? That's how it works. So what they're doing now is they're going to be sending surveys to the parents in the hopes of them responding to find out, did he get his education? Because there's some school districts that say, well, he's not my kid. Because there's a tendency, because Philadelphia is so large, and there aren't enough residential treatment facilities in that area, they ship kids statewide. And so there are some districts said, you know, I won't see this family again, so they ignore the child. So what's happening is then the Bureau can go in there and then they can cite them if they're not supplying the education. Okay, so just letting you know that that's happening. Yes?
And this is also for like transition plans that are coming back? that you said in the
Right,
numbers.
right.
So is this
Well,
only
it's
gonna be
not for
residential?
transition, it's not for transition plan, but it's to say that the child has not lost out on education while they're away. Okay? So we still don't have a transition plan, but what they can do is they can hint around and say, well, and what have you sent back to the district? You know, you have to send information back. What happened during that so many week period of time? Because the IEP says that there has to be data collected, progress monitoring has to occur, all that sort of stuff. So what are you shipping back to the home school? Okay. Good. Okay. OMSAW is developing some training related to suicide prevention because there are requirements for suicide prevention, so I'm letting you know that that's in the works. Okay. New good news is restraints have gone down for the first time since 2009. First time. Not a whole lot, but it has gone down. The interesting thing is that it took a while for everyone to get on board to do the reporting out. So in the beginning, school districts were starting to do it. They got word first. Then charter schools said, what? You mean we're public schools and we have to do it? So yes, then they came on board. They had to do it. And then what happened is that then a lot of people were like submitting everything in June. They had a secretary that would just go through the pile of incident reports and then fill them out and send them. But the state said, you know, this isn't working because what if you have a kid that has a lot of restraints? We can offer some supports to the school district. And so they're trying to encourage people to do it on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be every 30 days or 60 days, but just try to get it in there. Because we had one student in the state, not in a public school, but in an APS, that was restrained 500 times in one school year. Think of it, 500 times in one school year. Legally, it was in the IEP, but this kid had lots of challenges. So the state went to that school and said, can you use some help? You know, they can offer some help. Now, of course, they're not going to supply staff, but they can offer some support. They also want to look at it because when they see that there's a district of a certain size, and they see that it has an extraordinary number of restraints compared to a district of the same size that doesn't have it, then they go, So they'll take like the 5, it's by percentages, but the 5 school districts with the most restraints, and they send them to summer camp. It's like an invitation, and it's required that you show up. Okay? So what they do is they bring them in, but they also bring in districts that are managing their situation without as many restraints, and then they have them sharing and dialoguing so that they can come up with better strategies. I like that model. It's not the punishment model. We're not beating up on you, I say we, but the Bureau is not beating up on a district who is struggling and has kids that had to be restrained. They're saying, can we do it better? Can we do it in a way that doesn't require as many? Because the reality is we have more kids in our neighborhood schools now than ever before that are challenged. They used to go to intermediate units and approved private schools. I know, I used to work in an IU. I'm hearing about all these cases and I'm not blinking. Like people say, you aren't shocked? I said, no, I worked with those kids back in the day when I was in the IU. But now, because of cost, it's budget issues, gang. Intermediate units can't tax. APSs say we're holding the line on the number of kids we're accepting because we're not getting additional money from the state. So guess what? They're your problem unless you pay us so much. You pay the whole freight. Because remember, APS's 40% is covered by the state. So they're like, nope, you pay the whole freight for these additional kids because we aren't getting the money that we need to really educate. So districts are saying, oh, well, you know what? We'll reinvent ourselves. We will support these kids. So we now have kids coming in kindergarten and first grade that have put multiple staff people in the hospital on the first week of school. I'm talking hospital. I'm not talking just for a scratch mark. Kindergarten, first graders putting staff in the hospital. Guess what? They're going to grow up. And you better hope that they take care of them because if not, they're going to be yours. Okay? I didn't mean to scare you. But the reality is that these kids need all sorts of supports. They have all sorts of challenges. You know, my I think it's my third highest number of emails this year is on toileting. Because kids that aren't toilet trained are in regular schools and in regular classes, and everyone's saying, what do you mean I have to wipe butts? And I'm like, yeah. Doesn't the nurse do it? No, it's not medical. At home, if you ever had a kid of your own, did you have a nurse come in to change your kid's diaper? No. That is just an access issue for the kid to get an education. So anyone, from administrator to paraprofessional, anyone in the range can be responsible for changing diapers or addressing bathrooming issues. So that's a new reality for a number of people across the state, whereas before they used to be in all IU programs or include private schools. Oh, aren't I full of good news here today? You're like, ah, you know what, I'm getting 15% of the cash bar that's out there. Only kidding. Okay, so the good news is restraints have dropped a little bit, and that's because we have the most number of people that have been trained in restraint training and de-escalation. So if you are asked to get the training, we have members that say, I don't want the training, because if I get the training, then I'm going to have to restrain. And PSEA's position is if they offer training, accept the training. Because you're responsible for kids to keep other kids safe and yourself safe. And so it may require the de-escalation techniques and as a last resort, restraint. That if you want to know about a program, you ask for the syllabus and you want to make sure that 80% of it is on de-escalation techniques, 20% on restraint. That's a good program because you want to use all your techniques to de-escalate the situation so you never have to put hands on kids. And the only time you put hands on kids is when they're going to injure other students or yourself, or themselves. We do have some students that will try to injure themselves. You never, if they just want to throw your laptop computer against the wall, that is not a reason for a restraint. You may need to be restrained, but the student doesn't get restrained. It's only if it's the safety of themselves, other students, or you, the staff person. Okay, let's turn to some good news. And that is that the Special Advisory Panel is developing about a dozen one-page information sheets. Not exactly like what I did with the infographics, but they're going to be one-pagers targeted parents, two-sided. They're going to be done in English and Spanish. And the reason is Michael Storr and Jim Palmero and the whole group, they have done great work. There's a lot of stuff on the transition website. But when the Special Advisory Panel looked at it, we said, it's really good, but some parents don't have all that time to read. There are some documents that are over 100 pages on the website. There are PowerPoints there that are, go on and on. They're good for conferences. They're good for in-service trainings, but parents on the fly would be challenged to read through it all. So we're having it boiled down into one-pagers. And so right now it's being shown to parents in Philadelphia that are Spanish-speaking. It's being shown at a number of other places for parents with children with disabilities to get their feedback on the drafts. So in my crystal ball, probably by the summer for the transition conference, they'll be done, but I'm not in charge of it, so that's just my crystal ball. Theirs may be a little bit different, but I see that process working out like that. So that'll be exciting to have those 12 pages because then you'll be able to use them at IEP meetings or engaging parents in conversations about a variety of topics in transition. Due process hearings. Do we all shake and shudder when I say that term? Okay, well, due process hearings, they have gone up, but not significantly. They look and see if there are big trends in a certain direction or not. There aren't. Okay, so my question to you is, how much money does it cost a district to either defend or to generate a due process hearing for their attorney, their side of the equation, not the parent side, just the kid's side? I mean this district side, the LEA side. How much? You can take a guess.
20,000.
20,000 too high, but thank you for guessing. I appreciate that. Somebody want to guess a little lower?
10,000?
10,000, you're closer. It's 7,000. That would be roughly the cost, because your district or your LA wouldn't hire their own solicitor to do the job. They would hire a specialized attorney in special ed. Okay? In my neighborhood is like Faust. Andy Faust is one of the attorneys, or from his firm. There are a lot of firms that the districts will hire from, because they need someone that specializes in that field. Okay, so that means that if a parent is hot to trot for a due process hearing, how much is their attorney going to be charging them roughly to get things rolling? 7,000. Yeah, roughly. Now, they may get a deal of family discount, or, it could be that they'll say, like, we'll take it at, and then we will then recoup the money from the district because we know we're going to win this case, so you don't have to put much out there in the beginning. Those sort of things may happen. But the key thing is in the due process hearing, and I'm getting to the reason why I'm talking about it in a second, is that you can't go to a due process hearing unless you have attorneys. Okay? You have to have them. Both sides have to have them. Then, when it's settled, who knows what happens when it settles? Let's say the parent or parents win. Okay? What happens when we come to cost factors? What happens? The parents win the case. The district pays for it. Excellent. The district pays for it. So that they pay both the attorney fee for the parents and their own solicitor or whoever they have. Okay? Good. So what happens if the district wins? Right. Each person pays for their own attorney fees. So the lawyer for the parents, that's their bill, and the district covers their own bill. Okay. So the reason why I mention this is because we have lots of people say, well, why do districts always give in to parents? Like it always happens that way. You have to understand the magic number is somewhere between up to 7,000 or maybe up to 14,000. If it's going to cost me $7,000 to implement or to buy or to have this program for this kid, it's cheaper to give it to the parents than to go to due process on. Okay? Because it's a gamble then. Do you have all the right stuff to defend your case? Because you're defending as the district. The parent has to prove that you're buffoons, that you're idiots, that you don't know what you're doing, that you're not professional, that you're not offering a good enough program, that their child's going to make adequate progress. Okay? That's what they have to prove. Now I bring you good news. Each of you in here, if you have a teaching certificate, you are considered an expert in your field. So when you're put up on the stand, they will ask, and where did you go to school? Or the lawyer will supply all that. Because what they want to do is they want to show that you have a certificate and that you are an expert. So the district doesn't have to go beyond that. It is the parents that have to undermine it. They have to chip away at it, not saying, oh, you went to this school rather than that. No, no, no. It's about what was your data collection? Did you implement it in a timely manner? Did you supply the accommodations as per the IEP? And the list goes on. That's what they're going to have to look at. And they're going to look at, did the kid make adequate progress? You notice I didn't say stellar progress. Adequate progress. Measurable progress. That's what's different. Okay? So, a parent may say, I want the kid, I'm using this example, hypothetically, from 4th grade reading level to 6th grade in a year. Yeah, we all wish that. But we're not putting that as a goal. Because we know from the history of this child that the child's not going to make that much progress. Okay? So you're going to make it a reasonable goal. But as long as the kid's still making progress, you're in pretty good shape. So here's the lesson for all of us. If a child is not making progress, you have to go back to the drawing board. You have to go back to an IEP team meeting if the child's not making progress. Because if you have a parent who in your gut you know, they're the red flag ones, like, uh-oh, watch out, watch out. If the kid's not making progress, you better go back to that IEP team. And if you're not the special ed teacher, and you're the general ed, you're the career and tech ed teacher, then you need to go to the person that's the case manager, that special ed teacher, and say, time out, I want to talk to you. And then I would recommend that you do CYA. Anyone know what that is? And that's not a special ed acronym. Okay, we have many of them, but that is not one that we invented. Cover your, you know what, for the one person in the room that's saying, wait, CYA, children and youth. No. Okay, so what happens is that you can send an email or you can drop off a note and say, I'm concerned about Bernie's progress in shop. The challenges is in the vocabulary, just for lack of a better example. And so what happens is that the student needs to know that vocabulary to get through that next unit or all those units and the quarter, the semester test or whatever. So what happens is then you say, we could go back to the drawing board. And hopefully the special teacher realizes it. Now, revisions, it doesn't have to be a brand new IEP, but revisions can be done on the phone. So if you and the special teacher talk and everything, you come up with some great ideas, they can be conveyed to the parent on the phone, and then the revisions can be listed in the IEP. You don't have to have this big meeting. The parent's thrilled that you're keeping up with the kid, you're checking up on the child, and then you move on. The documentation is critical that shows that you had an IEP that was last May, and here it is October, and you've revisited it, saying, you know what, in our professional judgment we thought we had it nailed, but you know what, we had to tweak it. It just wasn't enough, or wasn't the right stuff for the shop class, or the nuances related to the size of the class, or this material is really dense, or what have you. And so it shows that you were working on it. Hearing officers love that stuff. The same with behavior plans. You don't just throw up your hands and say, it ain't working. Get the kid out of here. So my next question to you is, if you as the district, not you individually, you as a district or you as a career and tech ed center say, I want this kid out of here, and the parent says no, and the district says, we'll support the career and tech ed center and we will go to a due process hearing to get the kid out of there. Because they can do that. Pendency applies. Pendency is a fancy name for stay put. Okay, so the kid has to stay there. Because the parent's saying, no, I don't want to change. The district says, oh yeah, well we're going to due process. Take me to due process. I don't care. But the kid doesn't move. For how long does an average due process hearing take? From that point in time when the district submits for a hearing. How long is it going to be? Oh, come on, I like guesses.
A year?
A year. You know what? It feels like that. It isn't quite a year, but it will feel like that. Okay? Somebody, you said 6 months? Did I hear that right? Yeah. Okay. It is roughly between 102 and 120 days. So guess what? You're going to have the kid for a while. A due process is not a magic wand that says the kid is going to leave very quickly. So, you know what? You have to resign yourself to the fact that you have to be methodical in your approach. You have to do positive behavior supports, and if it's not working, you go back to the drawing board and rewrite the plan so it's still positive, but you're using different methods to get things across the kid, get the kid to toe the line and do wonderful things, make progress. So I just want to throw those realities in because a lot of times people scratch their head and say, well, why is the kid still here? The kid did this, the kid did that. But I don't want you to be completely frustrated. So if you have a child with an intellectual disability, and I'm not picking on them, but they're that exception to the rule. Remember, chapter 14 says you cannot suspend a child with an intellectual disability because it's from 1970-71. And some of you don't look old enough to remember that year. I do remember those years. So 1970-71, the Park Decree allowed kids to go into public schools, no matter what. If they have a disability, they're allowed in. Before that, if you weren't toilet trained and you had a disability, guess what? You ain't getting in my school. So now they're allowed in, and it said because it was especially kids at that time called mentally retarded that were being denied education. So they put a special section in there that said that they could not be suspended because the parents were smart enough to say, you know what? They'll get the kids in there, but they'll suspend them the first day they arrive and they still won't be in schools. And so, guess what? The settlement agreement was that they cannot be suspended. And that's not going to change in our regulations or in our laws or anything else. So, what do? Because we had a case out in Western PA where the administration and the staff didn't know it. They had some smart urban youth with intellectual disabilities who roamed the hallways and terrorized the school building. Now, if you can imagine that, I was sort of laughing too, until I heard what happened. This one teacher didn't recognize the student and said, go to class, and the student said no, lifted the teacher up off the floor, threw her against the lockers, gave her a concussion, and broke some of the bones in her leg, okay? And so then what happened is then it got even worse because then she hobbled to the office and said, I need to go to the hospital. They said, well, there's an urgent care at the local street corner. You can go there. No, I need to go to the hospital. Well, then you have to wait till the end of the day. So the bottom line is she left and she's suing them, and the courts have allowed her to sue because they denied her medical treatment. And she had a concussion and she had issues with her leg. But what she came to one of my sessions, this is like the following year, I'm doing a training out there, and she's like, so what do you do with that kid? Or those kids that were roaming the halls? And I said, you can't do in school, so you do the behavior. Yeah, we did that. It didn't work. We did this, we did that. I said, well, how about in-school suspension? She said, but you're not allowed to suspend. I said, well, in-school suspension is not the same as out of school. She said, so what's it look like? I said, you have to work on the IEP goals. That's what's critical about an in-school suspension. As long as you're working at the goals, it's not considered a suspension. Remember the 10 and 15-day rule? No more than 10 days in one shot, or a total of 15 for the school year. But if you do in school, you're okay as long as those IEP goals are addressed. Now think of it. Do you have an IEP goal in every single thing that's going on in the school day? No. So if you're in a school building that has a mix of, you have specials and you have academics and you have career and tech ed, you may have a career and tech ed goal, so that goal has to be worked on in this in-school suspension. And let's say there's a language arts goal. But the kid doesn't go to art, music, phys ed, or any of those because they're not goals. So the kid can be sequestered in the in-school suspension room. But one thing to be careful of is you don't just place the kid in there permanently, because then that's a change in placement. What you have to do is you have to look and say, well, what are the policies for general ed kids? So for hitting another kid, what is it? I'm just making it up. If it's a one-day suspension, then the kid gets a one-day suspension. You have to, whatever's good for the goose is good for the gander. You can't be discriminatory against the individual with disabilities. But it gives another option. Now, I'm not looking to place kids with intellectual disabilities in suspension rooms, but it gives a cooling off period. It gives time for the group to figure out next steps. Okay? It also says something to the student. You know? And for those students that were roaming the halls, all of a sudden they have a new reality in their world. Okay. I just like to keep track. Okay, so it was interesting. The Office of Dispute Resolutions, which counts up how many due process hearings, is really excited. Because they said, you know what, as soon as we hired someone that spoke Spanish, our numbers went up for Spanish complaints. Duh. Really nice people, but it was like they were surprised. I'm like, okay. The neat thing is you don't have to go just to due process. You can go to facilitation and mediation. There are other options. The state does not want to have people go to due process, so you can go to facilitation, and that's where you just have another try at the IEP. That's a simplistic version of that. Mediation, though, is where you actually take a third party. So I'm going to say you're the mediator, and we'll take the family here, and then we'll take the district there, and we may separate you into two different rooms. And the mediator walks back and forth between the two rooms and tries to work out a deal. Okay? And they will arm twist. They'll come up to the family side and they'll say, well, you know what? You have a grocery list here for the hearing. You know what? And some of them look pretty weak. You know what? Can you throw 3 of them off the list? I'll be back. Then they'll go back to the district and say, oh my God, you didn't have OT and PT and you didn't have speech for the first 3 months of the year? Come on. You better offer compensatory education right away. You better throw that on the table. I'll be back. Oh, and guess what? I think they're making movement in the other room. I hear that they're going to drop a couple of their concerns. I'll be back and let you know what they are. Then go back here and then say, okay, so which ones are you dropping? Okay, those 2. Oh, guess what? I think they're ready to give you some compensatory education for that. Now, are there nuances to that that you needed addressed? Okay, and then they go back and forth until they get a settlement. So the state loves that. If they can get a settlement, they don't want people going to due process. Okay. The one thing I didn't mention with the ESSA, the new federal law, is that 1% of our student population can take the alternative assessment and have it count towards their district count for statewide assessments. The federal law is saying 1% very clearly, but we don't know if that 1% means only 1% of the special ed population can take it, or more can take it, but only 1% count. Because we have districts that have more kids take it than count it. So we're waiting to see what the feds come out in guidance on that. Okay. For those of you that have paraprofessionals that you work with, the patent system is going to continue to offer online trainings, which is good news because they no longer have the federal grant money for that. But they're still going to offer online offerings. So that's good. We have, PSEA is now offering online offerings. So you can be in your PJs, drinking a glass of wine or having a mug of beer while you're getting Act 48 hours. I shouldn't recommend that.
You're just being videotaped, that's all.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, you know, and that's afterwards to celebrate that you have been successful in completing the course. So what happens is that we're offering online offerings for Act 48 and for paraprofessionals. If their employer is okay with it, they can take courses that would count for their Chapter 14 hours. Now, it's a member's benefit, so you have to be a member of PSEA to benefit from it. When you enter your ID information, because it's the members only section of the website, it will track you. So if you're an EA member or professional, automatically it gives you the course offerings for Act 48. If you're a paraprofessional, it takes you to the ESP side, and those are the offerings. There are some that are crossover, but not all are crossover, because there are some that are designated strictly for a certain group. So we're excited about that. So I'm giving you an opportunity here. We're looking to enhance the offerings, because if you look, there's a lot of Bernie Miller presentations, which is fine, but we're looking for other options related to specific areas, such as what you're doing here. So if you decide that you think you have a course that would be either useful for EA members or for ESP, my email is bmiller@psea.org. Okay, we can start the conversation. For EA, it would be an hour presentation because Act 48 requires an hour or more. It requires a PowerPoint, or it could be something that we videotape. That's another possibility. It could be just all videotape. But a lot of people do PowerPoints with a voiceover. And the cool thing is you voice over one slide at a time, so if you screw up a slide, you don't have to start from the beginning. You just have to redo that one slide, the talking part. You have to come up with 5 questions at the end that are multiple choice or true and false, because we don't want people doing their laundry and cooking dinner while the whole thing's running. We want them to actually sit there and watch the entire presentation. And if they pass, then the Act 48 is submitted to PDE. If they're paraprofessionals, they can print out a certificate. So, and we have committees that will review proposals now, member-driven. Members are going to review, and then they'll give feedback to us in Ed Services as to if they think it's a good course for the members. And that was triggered because Paige, the Gifted Advocacy Group, is developing their second course that's going to be available online. They tried it out last week in Bedford at a conference that I was hosting, and so they were getting feedback on that, so they're going to run a second live, another offering for us real soon. And a lot of you may know that we have reduced the number of indicators for the federal government. We used to have 20, now we're going to go down to 17, and number 17 is the new one. Some of you have been in the field for a while, know that the state goes on these waves of things. So we had indicator 13, where you had to have a transition goal in every IEP. That was the training for 5 years. Well, that's over with. I mean, we still have it, but the focus isn't there. And before that, it was LRE, which was during Gaskins, but it also was when we were looking at that as a goal for the feds. So the new one is increasing graduation rates for students with disabilities that are minorities. So for 5 years now, you're going to hear a lot more about that. So the good news is I like the presentation that the patent system developed. So they have it online, and we've just gotten it. I have to put the quiz questions at the end, so when I get back to the office this week or next week, we're going to have that live, and it'll be Act 48. And it's also closed caption, which is cool. They can do that. We haven't figured that out in our system yet. So we have that as another offering. So if you want to know what Indicator 17 is in a big way, because they're piloting it in, I think it's 3 high schools in the West, the Central, and the East, and then it's going to expand to more districts as we go on. Yes?
Are districts still being affected by students that defer to diplomas on their graduation rate?
Yes, they are being impacted. The federal government hasn't changed that aspect of the law. So if a student stays till they're 21, it negatively impacts the graduation rate.
These we're having districts now saying only life skills kids can defer.
And that is illegal.
I know it is.
All students can stay and defer. They can stay as long as they want. General ed students can stay till they're 21 also. So if you want to use that as a line, there's nothing that says a kid has... Nothing says a kid has to graduate at 17 or 18. It's when they complete all the requirements. That's what it is. So if a kid decided that they took multiple phys ed courses their freshman year and they're behind, they can stay another year. Yeah, so that's a bunch of baloney and it's illegal. Yes?
On that same topic, there was an 18-year-old student in one of our sending districts who had never gone to our current technical center before, had expressed an interest, and was told that, no, you have to graduate. So
Well, the parents need to push it. All they have to do is get a lawyer to send a letter, and they'd acquiesce. They just don't want to fund it, but they would have to. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so that's, I know that happens. It's troubling. So anyway, indicator 17, so you're going to see work being done. Now for those districts that get into it as part of the pilot or they're in the expanded group as the years go on, they have to have a dashboard. It would be nice to have a steering wheel, right? Yeah. Dashboard. What's a dashboard? Anyone know? I'm giving you these terms, so you're really up on the terms. Okay? A dashboard is an information system. Like, oh my God, your district's already had it. But does your dashboard do the following? Does your dashboard take and mesh the three big indicators, and I don't mean the indicator 17, the big three items that would help you forecast if a kid's dropping out? So what are those things that we can figure out in middle school that determines if a student's going to drop out or not between middle school and high school? What's one? Attendance. Ding, ding, ding. That's one of the items. If they don't show up for school, there's a real good chance that they're going to fall behind and they're going to drop out. Okay? There's something going on there. What's the next thing?
Grading level?
Grades. Academics. So if you're failing courses, duh, that's really important. And then what's the third one? Discipline, right. Incident reports is the way a lot of people list it. So if you have those three indicators, there's a real good likelihood, if you're red flagged on them, you're going to be leaving. And it was done with an internationally well-known study in Philadelphia. I just don't remember the name of the study. They looked at middle school kids in Philadelphia, and they're using it around the country and around the world as a way of looking at dropout prevention. So your dashboard has to pull them together so that it shows the kid's name and it then shows, either in color code or something that says, is the kid in the green, the yellow, or the red? Red's bad. And if you see the kid red in multiple areas, boy, you have major issues. But what they then do is they use that data to make informed decisions as to what are we going to do in school to help support that student and other students. So you don't just have an administrator say, I got grant money, I'm going to buy a new reading program. If it's related to attendance, that may not be the issue. It's not tied to reading. Okay, so they're trying to tie it directly into what the data is showing. So cross your fingers. They're using the National Dropout Prevention for Kids with Disabilities, that network, as their resource, who has lots of good stuff. Okay. Oh, crap. It's that time already. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. We are doing well with graduation rate. Just want to give you kudos, pat on the back. You're doing great things for students with disabilities. Also, I want to let you know that nationally, we are out of the top 7 states that have the most special ed students. We have gotten a good report card 8 out of 9 years. We are the highest, if you will, in getting that out of all the top 7 states. We beat California, Texas, New York, New Jersey, and I forget the other ones. Michigan's probably next. We are doing good things by kids. So I'm going to end on a positive note and say, kudos to you, because the feds are saying we're doing good stuff. That means more federal money comes to our state to try new programs out, to let Pennsylvania be the blazer trails and to be the poster child, if you will. And when you have Mississippi that graduates 33% of their kids with disabilities, and you see what our graduation rate is, we're doing good things by kids. We can continue to improve it, but you know what? By God, you're doing great work. So thank you for your time. And if you have questions that come up later, bmiller@psea.org, and I hope I can help you out and answer your questions. Okay? Thank you very much for your time.